Hello, Nas. Hello, Owen. Hello, Rob Key. How are you?
I'm very well, Ward. Are you?
Good. Well, I will be in just a second if you just give me a moment. But you have selected differently. You know, Michael Atton was talking on the podcast with Nas the other day about the end of season, picking for winter tours, glass of red, county averages in one hand. You're not seeing it that way. Example, Josh Hull coming in, not into the side, but into the squad. Just explain and reiterate your philosophy.
Well, I think you sort of have your style, really, the way that you want to go out and play, which isn't about just going out as you like, you know, just playing shots and you've got to change the way you do it, all of that. You know, you want batters, as I sort of feel like I'm like a broken record. You want batters who can put good bowlers under pressure, and that means can you put Bumrah, Shami, Cummins, people like that under pressure, and you don't always see that in county cricket, so that's the judgment you have to make. Who has the talent and ability to do that? And you're taking a bit of a flyer on that in some ways. Then you want batters as well who can soak it up, so you need both of those games. And some batters, when I speak to them and they say, well, how do I get in? You say, well, you're very good at soaking up the pressure, not so good at putting the pressure on, and that's what you have to develop. And then the same thing with bowlers. You know, you want bowlers that generally, we want a varied attack. You know, you'd love to have 4 Mark Woods or Jofra Archers, but that's not the reality. But what you want is people that generally can operate above, sort of around 84 and above, because that generally is what the best bowlers do. Or if you're not that, you've got to have a huge amount of skill. Someone like what Chris Wokes has had, Jimmy Anderson at the latter part, because Jimmy for a bit of it and Broady were quicker than the 80-mile-an-hour stuff. And then you're looking at, you know, like that variation, and you're looking at where people are now and where they're going to be. So it's not always about, well, when you speak to people, you say, well, what's he like? And they go, well, he does this, he does that, we're not quite sure. You say, yeah, but where can he be? What's the upside to them? And you always, I think, or we think, you want to select with optimism. You know, we lack optimism at times in this country. We're always seeing the danger, always seeing the trouble, always seeing what people can't do. You want to think about, if this goes well, how good can they be?
Do you look at the county averages at all?
Yeah, we do, but it doesn't take long to do that. You know, but there's lots of different ways you can do it. I believe a lot, we all believe a lot in impact, really. How much you impact games of cricket. You know, so are you the person, say someone like Ben Stokes, whose averages wouldn't be, you know, he's not averaging 50 with the bat and 21 with the ball, but there's no question. He impacts every single game just by being there. So you're trying to work out who's impacting games of cricket, who's impacting it when it's tough, who's the guy doing the overs when it's not, when nothing's happening. So you're always trying to make judgments on that, and we look at lots of different things.
Do you find out about the character of these individuals? Who do you speak to? Because one thing having the ability, but the thing with Jamie Smith, he's got the ability. One thing that struck all of us is how ready he is for Test match cricket. Nothing at the moment seems to faze him. So how do you find out about the character of individuals? 2
ways mainly. Obviously, there's a lot of very trusted people in county cricket, the directors of cricket, the coaches, people like that. So someone like Stewie's, you know, obviously big on someone like Jamie Smith, like he is all of his players. But there's always things. People give things away when they don't mean to almost. It's the little things they say, you think, oh, that's interesting. And then I tell you what's become really important for us is Lions cricket. So we see county cricket is producing so much talent. And then we have the odd Lions game in the winter as well. So I went away a couple of years ago. That's where we saw Jamie Smith. All of a sudden you just see, well, he's better than others. And then Josh Tongue, you're watching him. You know, Josh Tongue averaging whatever he is in county cricket. He's bowling in Sri Lanka. And, you know, like you go, well, he's better than everyone else. You know, it's a pretty simple decision. And the same thing with Shoaib Bashir. You know, Stokesy famously puts on our WhatsApp group. And then you just look and you're like, wow, this kid's got something. And the thing about the clips is, what you see is you see someone at their best. When you watch the highlights, when you watch young players and you just see a 40, 50-second clip, you don't see the rubbish. You just see their potential. You see the upside, and you trade on that.
And the environment that is being created by Ben and Baz, talk about the upside a lot. But let's talk about the downside, guys that fall by the wayside, because they get overlooked a lot of the time. Early on, it was guys like Alex Lees, Rian Ahmed has been in and out. There have been various spinners and seamers. What's the support system like for those guys? Is it the Lions or is it an alternative?
It's different for different people, but I think that's the best point about that really is that selectors or people involved in selecting, so the captain, coach, Luke Wright, myself, you can look like you're clever because the environment's so good. And that's the absolute key to everything. It doesn't really matter. You know, you can have really good selections, but if they go into an environment that's stifling, then it doesn't work. You know, it's what he did with that white ball team. You know, look at selections are fine, but actually it's the environment that him, Bayliss and those guys created that allows players to thrive. So that's the most important thing. For all my waffle beforehand, that's the most important. Now I'll answer your question, is actually that, you know, then you need, so someone like Ray and Ahmed is a long-term bet. Some of those guys, they're not, you know, they're not different slightly to Alex Lees, who it's a bit more like, you're slightly more established, you've got to go and find that style that we want, really, which he's done well in county cricket. So everyone's different. You've got someone like Ray and Ahmed, I know, you know, he will be looking at him for Pakistan, same with someone like Tom Hartley. You're looking at times for the conditions that they're going to play in. You've got a few long-term bets that you're thinking, you know, 3 or 4 years' time. Someone like Josh Hull, don't expect the finished article. You know, you just see potential there, and you're putting them on that journey now. You think they got the talent, and you're trying to get them to learn in international cricket. Bob Willis would have done it years ago. You know, Bob came in, he just bowled quick, he came in early, and if you get the right bet where you think they've got the ability and talent, they can adapt quickly.
Explain that specific selection, because then we can actually get our head round the way you think. You've got Josh Hull, who's averaging 62 in first-class cricket, or you could go Sam Cook, who's got 295 wickets at 19 over a 7-year period. Firstly, how do you go, we're going to go with that one? And secondly, do you explain to the other lad, Sam Cook, you're getting him at 19s, but we've gone for someone who's getting him at 62?
Sam Cook's someone I've spoken to. I haven't spoken to him about the Josh Hull one, because you're not also looking at who's the best bowler, and then it's a list from down onwards. You're looking at the position they're going to fill in the game. So someone like Chris Woakes, for example, he's in that now. Someone like Sam Cook is in that Chris Woakes mould, where they're slightly slower, but they're hugely skilled. So his competition is Chris Woakes. It's not Mark Wood. So when Mark Wood goes out the team, then you're looking for someone, right, okay, who's not exactly like for like, because he's obviously left arm and tall, who's going to add that part of our attack? And you're looking at everyone else. So when you're looking at, like at the moment, that number 7, number 8 role, the batting becomes important. So it's like, okay, so Bryden Cast comes into that, because Bryden Cast is someone who can go out there and he can fill in that number 8 role as well as bowl. So you're not just looking at, okay, best bowler here, then a list down. You're looking at the role that you want them to fulfill.
In terms of central contracts, we bring up the list of central contracts that you announced when we were out in India for that World Cup. If you look at Josh Hull, as we've been talking about, into the Test match squad, doesn't have a central contract. Look at the white ball teams you've selected, and some of these guys that you've put on long-term deals are not there. How difficult was it to come up with that list at the time? And to put it bluntly, do you think you sort of jumped the gun a bit and confettied it a little bit? Because a lot of these guys are not going to be involved. You know, Dawid Malan announced his retirement recently. He's on a central contract. Jimmy Anderson retired. He's on a central contract. Sam Curran not in the ODI squads. He's on a long-term central contract. Did you have to do it so quickly? Did you have to give so many away?
Yeah, but you've got to remember that there's a lot of myths about central contracts, really. For a start, they're not all on the same price. No one really is on the same amount. It changes, and your value to the ECB is very different. So Ben Stokes and Ray and Ahmed aren't on the same level by any stretch. It goes from a decent amount right down to just a little bit more than county cricket. And some of those bets are long-term bets, like the Ray and Ahmed, some of the younger bowlers. And you're often putting bowlers on there, so they serve lots of different purposes, county contracts. You're also got, it's not a daily rate. It's not about, the days have gone where a central contract is a daily rate, where we go, right, you're doing this because we think you're going to play this amount of games. A lot of the time you're trying to keep hold of your talent as well. You've also got other things, like every new broadcast cycle, there's a brand new negotiation with TEP. And it's not a bad thing.
Just explain TEP for those who don't know.
Well, TEP is the Team England Player Partnership, so they're the players' representatives, and it's like a group negotiation thing. And so they're always, you know, quite rightly going to try and get as much money for the players as you can. We're going to try and pay them as much as we possibly can. But having 3/4 of your staff on, or of your best players on a contract, ain't the worst place to be. But you need to be flexible with them all the time. So you just got to see them in lots of different ways. And you know, you're not going to get them all right. There's times, but I'll always maintain someone like Jofra Archer, who hasn't played for a couple of years, but has been on a good central contract. I don't regret that in any stretch, because if the bet is right and he comes good, and if he doesn't, well, that's one of those things, but I'll always have taken that bet.
So the control element to the contracts, the multi-year deals, is a huge positive, but when you look at the broader scheme of cricket landscape, when do you actually pull your weight with players? Because players are getting gaps and going here, there, and everywhere we're seeing with the test side at the moment. So when does that moment happen?
Yeah, well, it happens sort of often. I think this year we pulled a load of people out the IPL, which didn't make me the most popular person with India and stuff like that, and that was because we had a World Cup coming up. You know, we're looking at all the time, you negotiate. A lot of my job now, I have people from franchises ringing up, when can you have this player? So there's a lot of players where we put in place now, when we offer them this time around, it will be like, right, this is your winter. Because the one thing that we can trade off, because actually we pay our players less, especially the top ones, than they can get in franchise cricket. But the one thing we can offer is that security. So you look at someone like New Zealand, because there'll be some of those players in New Zealand, we go, you know, oh, you get paid much more than a New Zealand cricketer. Not all of them. You know, and some of their best players are now turning down central contracts. That's not a position we want to be in. So I don't regret any of it. We can finesse it, of course, and there's always going to be people that, you know, you end up looking at and think, well, they're getting a lot of money for not doing much. Well, but that's the bet you have sometimes. You know, contracts like that all around the world happen. You know, it's like you boys. You boys are on decent deals here, I'd imagine. You're doing less cricket than you ever have done.
How do you balance a reward for loyalty and reward for performance and also keeping cricketers hungry, or do you just think everyone on that list will stay hungry from what you see? If you give 2-3 year deals, then I'm not saying they will coast, but they could coast. How do you keep them hungry? You could just give them a 1 year contract and keep them hungry like that.
And that's the balance, yeah. That's where it is tough, because you're trying to work out, like, who are those characters? And you don't get them all right, is the honest truth. But you work out what the bet is. And a lot of the time, you know, if you're a bowler, that's where the risk is. So there'll be some of our guys, especially the batters in Test cricket, because the schedule, when you look from next year, from the new year, the schedule's nowhere near what it has been for the last 2 years. You haven't got the clashes. The problem will actually be more about resting players. You haven't got the test match finishing like we have in Pakistan and 2 days later a white ball series. It's a bit more, it's a better schedule really. So look, I've waffled so much I've forgotten your question.
Keeping them hungry, keeping a cricketer hungry.
You know, I think, but that is part of that, and it's not easy to do, but it goes back to more, you know, what the great leaders have done is they've created an environment of people are desperate to play. And then you have a time like we've done where it's very relaxed and you want everyone to go out there and express themselves and have a bit of golf and you have a bit of time off. All we ask in return is that you commit. And I don't care if you're on a central contract, if you're not committed to what we're doing, so if you're not someone who's training as hard as you possibly can, putting everything in and committing to the way that we want to do things, then you're gone.
Just very quickly, specifically on white ball cricket, you brought some new life in Bethel and Mosley into the squad. The youngest players in the previous 2 World Cup finals, Shubman Gill and I think it was Marco Jansen at 24 and 25. What is the target now for the white ball team with this new blood coming through? Well,
the white ball team's had it tough. I'll try and answer it quickly, because the next series has always been a World Cup. Now we got the Champions Trophy, but we feel like there's a bit of time now where it's been the end of an era where a great team has just gone like that and you're trying to bring them in. So it's Champions Trophy, but really for 50 over, you're looking at that World Cup in, what, 27?
We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Just to let you know, Sky don't hand out 3-year contracts willy-nilly. They hand out some bad ones.
Haven't you got 4, 5?
They hand out some bad contracts, but they don't hand them out willy-nilly.
Some of you are out of date as well, you know, you're gone.